Shalom. So, hopefully, everything is working well. I'm trying something new tonight. I am multi-streaming onto Twitch as well. So, we will hopefully be able to make it all work. And if not, not. Okay, so today we are going to be doing Numbers 15 because this is the third part in our little roundup of the chapters of the Shema. There are 4 chapters in the Tefillin. This Numbers 15 actually isn't one of them. But this is one of the 3 chapters which we recite every morning and every night. So, and actually it's only a small part at the very end, but I figured let's discuss what it has to do with. And what it has to do with is the Tsitsit, which is usually translated as fringes or tassels. So this is the word itself. The word Tsitsit shows up 4 times in the Bible. And I mean, so this says it's of uncertain derivation. Oftentimes what people will say, although apparently it's in Ezekiel, it's talking about a lock of hair. So I think that might have some indication as to what exactly it means. There are other words which are similar. So there's this word tzitz, which means blossom, and which may be the masculine form of it. And then there's this word tzutz, right? Again, to shine, sparkle, blossom. So the tzitz, generally what we often say is that it comes from the word to show or to shine. And so that's why you'll see when we talk about the when we go through Numbers 15 that many people are careful to wear their tzitzit out so they are visible. And it says, so that you shall see them and be reminded of God and not sin, right? Yeah, so that's the Hebrew word tzitz. Now, in Aramaic, the word that's used is actually a Greek loan word, kruspidin. And this word kruspidin, it comes from the Greek. I don't know much about Greek, unfortunately. I tried looking it up, but the Aramaic word, and this is from the Targum Onkelos of Numbers 15, and Targum Onkelos is what's kind of considered the official translation from the Hebrew to the Aramaic of the 5 books of Moses. And Onkelos was a Tana. He was obviously a convert, and the Targum, to some extent, is considered a commentary, and obviously being a commentary from a Tana, it's considered of great value, and it's often cited. But the word it uses for tzitzit is kruspidin, which is obviously a loan word from the Greek. Now, one thing about that is this word kruspidin also shows up in the Christian Bible, krospedon, Okay, and it shows up 5 times in the Christian Bible. So we'll go over it. So this is how they define it, how Strong's defines it. In classical Greek, the extremity or prominent part of a thing, edge, skirt, margin, the fringe of a garment. In the New Testament, for Hebrew, Tsitsit, i.e., a little appendage hanging down from the end of the mantle or cloak, made of twisted wool, a tassel tuft, right? And it says, the Jews had such appendages attached to their mantles to remind them of the law, according to Numbers 15:37, which is what we're going to read tonight. And I actually asked Pastor Tanner about this, and he quoted a study Bible that he said is very authoritative. And it says, in the Bible, it denotes the hem of a garment, or especially the tassel, which the Jews bore on each of the 4 corners of the outer garment as a constant reminder of all the commandments. Numbers 15:38, Deuteronomy 22:12. And here's my favorite part of this commentary. Jesus lashes the Pharisees for their purely outward display of piety, using wool of the prominent hyacinth blue and white. They made their tassels as long as possible in order to gain a reputation for zealous prayer and strict observance of the commandments. Yeah. So let's talk about actually what the rabbinic practice is. So first of all, in Orthodox Judaism, rabbinic Judaism, we say that this only applies to those things which you wear during the day, and only to 4-cornered garments. So obviously, back when it was much more common to wear a 4-cornered garment, especially as a tunic or as kind of a toga, as a shawl, right? Those garments had to have fringes upon them. Generally, the garments that we wear today, very few of them have 4 corners. Although there is some argument about whether or not, shirts and jackets can be considered to have 4 corners, because if you notice, there's 2 corners here and there's 2 corners on the bottom, and so the not counting the sleeves, right, we end up with 4 corners, right? But so some people are careful to actually round and make sure not to have 4 corners. And then there's the question of if your jacket has has a pleat in the back, right? So it has an opening, so then it might have 4, and some people round those. But generally, what happens is that Orthodox Jews will deliberately wear a 4-cornered garment in order to have the fringes on them. There's the Talit Katan, which is something many Orthodox Jews wear. I would say most Orthodox Jews wear every day. And in fact, many people wear them night and day. And that's the Talit, that's called a Talit Katan. A small talit literally means garment, right? So, and the Talit Gadol, that I probably should have looked up pictures, but I'm guessing a lot of you have already seen these, the prayer shawls, right? The large prayer shawls, those in Ashkenazi Jews, only married men wear those. unmarried men don't wear a talit gadol. Sephardic Jews, both married and unmarried men, wear talit gadol during morning prayers, and generally anytime you put on tefillin, you also put on a talit gadol. On Yom Kippur, at all of the services, you wear a talit gadol. And I mean, there's all kinds of things about it. We don't use, most people don't use blue dye anymore, because generally most people say that we don't know what the blue dye, how it was made and where it was made. There have been attempts to revive it, and it's actually become somewhat more common for people to wear the blue, because the Temple Institute has a blue which they claim is correct, and then one Hasidic dynasty also has a blue which they believe is correct. I personally never used the blue, because when I looked into it, it seemed like you were playing with fire, because if the blue is not correct, then you are wearing a four-cornered garment which does not have proper tassels on it. If you're wearing just white, then, as is the custom, then everybody agrees you're fine. And generally, probably back during the time of Jesus, I'm guessing most of the poor people could not afford the blue. I'm guessing that's how the blue was lost, because blue dye was expensive. And this particular blue dye was expensive. So most people just wear white. The actual beged itself may have colors on it, but yeah, the tassels, generally everybody has just white tassels, although some people have started wearing blue. Anyway, so did Jesus wear tassels? I think so. I think if you look at the verses in the Christian Bible, it's pretty clear that these stories do have him wearing them. So it shows up 3 times in the book of Matthew. Once where he is criticizing the Pharisees for making their phylacteries big and making their Tsitsit long. There's 2 other times where people are touching the crossbedon, right, of his garment, and I'm thinking it's pretty clear that they reached out and grabbed the Tsitsit, right? That's what it makes sense to me. So let's just go ahead and take a look at those. So Matthew 9:20, and behold, a woman had having had a flux of blood 12 years, having come up behind him, touched the fringe of the garment of him, right? And then the next verse, it only talks about the garment, right? She was saying within herself, if only I shall touch the garment of him, I will be healed, right? So that's Matthew 9:20. Also crossbedon. Matthew 14:36, and they were begging him that only they might touch the crospedu, I guess, of the garment of him, and as many as touched were cured. And then Mark 23:5, all now the deeds of them they do in order to be seen by men. They broaden their phylacteries and enlarge their crospeda, their tassels, right? So he's criticizing people for being showy in their deeds, which obviously this is a perfectly valid complaint to have. I mean, say no problem with that, to criticize people who do that. That seems like a valid criticism to me. Mark 6 again has the people begging to touch the fringe of his clothing in order to be healed. Excuse me. Luke 8:44, having come behind, touched the fringe of the cloak. So this is again the woman who had the bleeding, and right. So she was also healed apparently. Okay. So, unless there are any questions, hello Noah. I am going to go ahead and start chapter 15. I'm just checking because I just this is the first time I'm streaming on Twitch. So but Shalom Noah. Okay. Verse 15. Let's start. So most of this chapter is actually about other things, mostly sacrifices. So 15:1, and it's a pretty long chapter, unfortunately. Well, unfortunately or fortunately. The Lord said to Moses, pretty simple, and the Lord spoke to Moses saying, pretty simple, Chabad, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, yep, and the Hebrew is, Vaydaber Havaya El Moshe Le'emor. Very common sentence. This is the preposition with the aleph, if you're keeping track of that, but we see this sentence several times in the Bible. Okay. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you have come into the land you are to inhabit, which I am giving to you, and NIV, speak to the Israelites and say to them, after you enter the land I am giving you as a home, okay, Chabad, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you arrive in the land of your dwelling place, which I am giving you. Okay? Let's look at the Hebrew. Daber el bnei Israel amarta alehem ki tavou el eretz moshavatechem asher ani noten lachem. Okay, so daber is the command form of the root Dalet Bet Resh in the PL, in the intensive, which Dalet Bet Resh is usually in. El is preposition with the aleph. Bnei Israel, right? It's in a construct. The sons of Israel. Ve'amarta. So again, this is the vav is flipping from. So this is the conjunctive perfect, right? It's flipping from the perfect to the imperfect. Alehem, right? Again, preposition with the aleph. Ki tavo. So ki means because, or when, or if. Tavo, right? So the root is bet vav aleph, which means to come. And here it's in the imperfect. It is written bechisaron vav if you're keeping track of that, which is normal. So when you come, when you will come, right? El eretz moshavotechem. Again, preposition of the aleph. Eretz means land, and it's in the construct form with moshvot, right? So a moshav comes from the root leshevet, actually lishov, right? Yud shin bet is the root, I would say, from yashav, which means to settle. Yeah, that's what they have as well. So a moshav in modern Hebrew, actually, so religious communes are not called kibbutzim. They are usually called moshavs these days. Or religious settlements are called moshav. Moshavot, Chisaron Vav, not so strange, right? The places of, so it's Eretz is in a construct form with moshavot, right? So land of settling, right? Land of inhabitants. Moshvotechem, so all y'all's places of settlement. Asher, pronoun relative. Ani is less formal, pronoun I. Noten is in the present tense. It's in the participle. Very common verb to give or to put or to set. Lachem, to all y'all. Right? So when you come to the land where all y'all are going to settle, and you make an offering by fire to the Lord, a burnt offering or a sacrifice, to fulfill a vow, or as a free will offering, or in your appointed feasts, to make a sweet, let's see what the footnote is, pleasing, aroma to the Lord from the herd or the flock. Okay? And you present to the Lord food offerings from the herd or the flock as an aroma pleasing to the Lord, whether burnt offerings or sacrifices, for special vows or free will offerings or festival offerings. Okay? Chabad. And you make a fire offering to the Lord, a burnt offering or a sacrifice, namely a peace offering. I'm guessing they're getting that from Rashi. For an expressed vow or for a voluntary offering, or on your festivals, to provide a pleasing fragrance for the Lord from the cattle or from the sheep. And I'm not going to do the Rashis, I promise. Okay. Va'asitem ishe la havaya ola o zevach lefale neder. Interesting. That's an interesting verb there. O bin dava o bemoadechem la'asot reach nehoach lahavaya min habakar o min hatzon. Okay, interesting. Okay, so va'asitem, again, the vav is flipping it. This is la'asot, ayin sin he, right? Kind of surprised at that yod being there, but okay. Va'asitem, and all y'all shall make, right? So it's, the perfect is being flipped because of that vav. Ishe. So esh means fire. Ishe means fiery thing. Okay? And obviously it means an offering that is to be burnt. And you can, how many times does this show? It shows up a lot in the Bible. 65 occurrences. That is a lot of times for that to show up in the Bible. You can use your concordance there if you like. But so an ishe, a fiery thing, right? La havaya, so prepositional lamed, and that is the tetragrammaton. Ola, written bechisaron vav as normal. So ola literally means something that goes up, right? So the root ayin lamed he, right? La'alot means to go up. So like when you make aliyah, if you move to Israel, an offering by fire looks like woman. Yes. So Isha is written exactly the same way in the consonants as Ishe. The only difference is that there is a segol underneath the shin in Ishe, as opposed to Isha, which has, I believe it's a kamatz, which looks remarkably like a segol. So yeah, can easily be misread. But in context, I mean, it's pretty clear. It's not telling you to make a woman to God, hopefully, right? But that is what the consonantal text would look like, exactly, precisely, right? And that's why we have the nekudot, we have the vocalization. Okay, ola, right? So if you move to the land of Israel, it's called aliyah, right? So going up, or when you're called up to the Torah, it's called an aliyah, right? And a korban ola is a sacrifice that goes up. It's actually a fully burnt offering. It's completely burnt up, and none of it is eaten. As usual, written bechisaron vav. O, conjunction, or, right? Zevach. So the root zayin bet het merely means sacrifice. So mizbeach is a place of sacrifice. It's an altar, right? Zevach. Lefal'eh. Now that I'm kind of surprised at. This is the infinitive of the root pe lamed aleph, which means to be miraculous, to be surpassing or extraordinary. Yeah. So pele is a miracle, and I'm pretty. That's a very interesting word usage there. I would probably not translate it as fulfill. I would probably try to say that it is some sort of extraordinary, right? Trying to do more than you need to, right? Being better than. Because a pele is either something that is beyond understanding or a miracle. Like so there are places where things are called pele because they are so extraordinary, they are so wondrous, right? And I think it is used in places to mean beyond understanding. You can use your concordance there, but that is the most interesting word so far in this chapter. Neder comes from the root nun daled resh, which means to volunteer, right? And neder also translates as vow. I think it is related to the word nazir, right, which is similar but different, right? And nezer means on the outside, but a nazir is a person who takes a vow, Nazirite vow, and possibly what happened was Jesus. There was some confusion between Jesus being from Netzer, right? The name of the town is Netzer, which it's with a tzaddik. It's not as Zion. So whether Jesus was known as a Notzri from the town of Netzer, or and actually so a large part of the Hebrew Christians were known as Notzrim, and the modern word for Christian in Hebrew is actually Notzri, whereas the Greeks started saying Nazarene, right? Which may have been a misunderstanding there. But whether Jesus was a Nazarene, as in had taken a Nazarite vow, or which would not make sense because obviously he's drinking wine, and Nazarites are not allowed to drink wine. But yeah, that's where the word Nazarene gets kind of confused if it's referring netzer or nezer. Anyway, neder, right? If you talk to Orthodox Jews long enough, they will say bli neder, meaning I am not making a vow. I will try. If you ask them to do something, they'll say bli neder, I will. Right? Without excuse me, making a vow, I will try to do that which you ask me. Okay. Right. Neder o bin dava. Right. So again, or bin dava, prepositional bet. So nadav. It's funny. We were actually just talking about the verse that says it's better to trust in God than to trust in princes, right? The word there is nedivim, which means people who are willing to give more than, right? So they're outstanding people, right? Nediv. Nadav means kind of to donate, right? Nun dalet bet. And a nedava is a volunteered offering, right? Somebody decides bin dava, right, as in their generosity to give something, especially here being a sacrifice, right? O be mo'adechem, and as usual, mo'ed is written without a vav. So a mo'ed is a time of a meeting, right? Possibly, I think the root may be vav ayin dalid. Well, here it's so they wrote it b'milui from ya'ad yud aleph dalid, which means to appoint. Okay, yeah. So an appointed time. Yeah, I do agree with that. I didn't know if it was a vav or a yud at the beginning of that. But a moed is an appointed time, a specific time. Literally, it just means appointed, but it is used a lot. And the moadim, 223 times in the Bible. Yeah, so holidays in Hebrew are known as moadim, which are set time, specific times. All right, all y'all's moadim, right, feasts, your appointed times, la'asot, and here this is the infinitive written b'milui of to do, ayin sin he, reach nihoah. Now this combination shows up a lot in the Bible, and part of that I think is the alliteration. You will notice this is a very good example of what's called a patach gezula, right? I said reach, I didn't say recha, because when you have a guttural at the end with a patach under it, the patach gets stolen. It's called a patach genuva, a stolen one, because it actually gets said before the consonant instead of, as usual, after the consonant. You'll notice this especially in soleach, right, which means to forgive. Shows up a lot. Reach is an aroma, right, to smell, and it is related to the word ruach, which means spirit or movement or wind, right? Nichoach is usually translated as sweet. I'm actually not sure exactly what it might come from. Nochach, from nuach, to rest. Eek, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I agree with that. I can understand what they're saying, but I would say a nun het het. It's pretty hard for me to say that that comes from nun vav het. Although if you believe in the two radical, right, that Hebrew originally had two radical roots, which then became three radical roots, then obviously it's they are related. Excuse me. To rest, or nehovach is usually translated as a sweet. I mean, this shows up together in a construct so often that it just gets translated as sweet aroma always. La Havaya, to God, the Tetragrammaton. Min habakar, right? So the root bet kuf resh literally means to meet, but bakar, as in to get, to greet, right? Levaker, and boker actually, when the sun comes up, is morning, because it's kind of greeting you, right? Bakar means usually refers to cattle. We would say that the difference between bakar and son is bakar tend to be larger cattle, larger livestock, whereas son would be smaller, like goats and sheep, right? O min hatson, right? And son, as usual, is written bechisaron vav. Yeah. Nothing too extraordinary other than that word pele here, lefale. Okay, that's verse 3. Please do stop me if you have questions. And you can always ask questions on the Discord server or in the chat. Checking to make sure everything's fine. Okay, verse 4. Then he who presents his offering to the Lord shall bring a grain offering of 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/4 of a hin of oil. Okay. Then the person who brings an offering shall present to the Lord a grain offering of 1/10 of an ephah, and they're saying that is probably about 3.5 pounds, or about 1.6 kilograms. So an ephah, it's a dry measure, whereas a hin is a wet measure. So ephot were used for things like grain, whereas hin was used for things like olive oil. Of the finest flour mixed with 1/4 of a hin of olive oil. And a hin, that is about 1 quart, or about 1 liter, also in verse 5. And Abad. The one who brings his offering to the Lord shall present a meal offering containing 1/10 fine flour mixed with 1/4 of a hin of oil. Okay. Vehikriv hamakriv korban lavaya minha solet isaron balul birviit hahin shaman. Okay, so you'll notice that all three of these have the exact same root, kuf resh bet, which means to become close. And this happens a lot in the Bible, in the Hebrew, that the alliteration, right, and the repetition, especially for emphasis. But remember, again, we are talking about the Bible being a song, really, and it does have its alliteration, and it is meant to be chanted. Right? Okay, so Vehikriv hamakriv korbano, right? So hikriv is in the hifil, right, which is the causative, right? So shall cause, and the vav is causing it to be flipped from the perfect to the imperfect, right? From the completed action to the incomplete action. Hamakriv, the person who brings it, right? So this is the participle, the present tense, excuse me, refers to the person who is bringing it, right? A person who does something is sometimes called by the participle, the present tense of the verb, right? So for example, a guard is called a shomer, which is the present participle of the verb to keep, right? So hamakriv, korbano. So a korban is the thing that is brought close, which is the sacrifice, right? Korbano, his korban, lahavaya, to the Lord. Minha, right? So the word mincha has come to mean the afternoon services in Hebrew, and that's certainly how it's used, but the afternoon services is actually named after the grain offering, right, which was brought, which was made of, which was called a minha, right? And I think that comes from lanuah, right, to from nun vav het, to cause rest. They don't seem to think so. I mean, it is used so many times in the Bible. 211 occurrences. Yeah. I think it always refers to a grain offering. Although apparently it can also be animals. Right. And I mean, you can use your concordance for more of that. Solet. So solet is the finest flour. I think the root is from sin vav lamed, no? A foreign origin, fine flour. A loan word in Egyptian. Sulta in Aramaic. Yeah, the word solet, basically, I just know it because of solet minha. And it's fine flour. It's considered a better type of flour than other types of flour, right? So it's telling you that it should be good flour. Yeah, minha, solet, a fine flour. Isaron, so this is a the root here is eser, ein sin resh, which means 10, and isaron is a 1/10, right? So 1/10, isaron. So I guess I'm not sure there's similar words. I can't think of any right now, but an isaron is a 10th. And they're assuming that isaron means isaron of an ephah, which is the dry measure that's usually used in the Bible for flour. Balul, so livlol, so this is related to bilbul, right? So which literally means confusion, right? So to put together. So balal means mixed. Yeah. From blil, water, from balal. Anoint? Anoint, I'm not, I had not seen. But I think it is related to bilbul, which is the root to confuse, right? Like, I guess the Tower of Babel, right? Yeah, Bavel. Birvit hahin shaman. So with in a revi'it, right? So reva means 4. Revi'it is 1/4 of a hin, right? Which is the dry measure. Ha-hin. And shaman at the end of the pasuk turns into shaman, right? So shaman literally means fat, but here obviously it's referring to olive oil. Yeah. Next verse 5. And 1/4 of a hin of wine as a drink offering you shall prepare with the burnt offering or the sacrifice for each lamb. NIV, with each lamb for the burnt offering or the sacrifice, prepare 1/4 of a hin of wine as a drink offering. Abad. And 1/4 of a hin of wine for a libation you shall prepare with the burnt offering or for the sacrifice for each lamb. Vehikriv, didn't go until that one. Veyayin lanesech revi'it hahin ta'aseh al ha'olah o lazavach, lakeves ha'echad. So, veyayin, and yayin means wine in Hebrew. Right? So yayin, and la nesech. Nesech literally means to spill. Well, they're saying a drink offering, but I think the roots, yeah, nasach, to pour out. Yeah. And some people would say that this is connected to meshach, to anoint. Well, not as in Mashiach, that's with a chaf, but a sin and a shin. I mean, a samech and a sin. Some people will argue there are actually the same letter. Okay. La nesech revi'it hahin, so 1/4 of a hin. Ta'aseh, you shall make, right? You shall prepare. Al ha'olah, so that's the preposition with the ayin. Olah, again, is the totally burnt offering. O lazavach, or to the zevach, right? And it's the cancellations that's changing zevach to zavach there. And there is the article in the vocalization, so that's why it's la zavach instead of le zavach, or le keves. The vocalization is implying that there is an article there, so for each, and that's why they're translating each, right? For each sacrifice or for each keves, which is a lamb, ha'echad, each, again, right? So each one, ha'echad. Yeah, it's pretty simple stuff, nothing too complicated. Verse 6, or for a ram you shall prepare as a grain offering 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/3 of a hin of oil. With a ram, prepare a fine offering of 2/10 of an ephah. Again, so now it's 7 pounds or 3.2 kilograms of the finest flour mixed with 1/3 of a hin. So that's 1 1/3 quarts, or about 1.3 liters of olive oil. Or for a ram, you shall present a meal offering containing 2/10 of fine flour mixed with 1/3 of a hin of oil. Right. O la'ayel ta'aseh minha solet shnei esronim belula bashemen shlishit hahin. Okay, so or, right, a la'ayel, so an ayel is a ram. Yeah, ta'aseh, you shall make, minha, solet, again, same words we've had before. Shnei esronim, right? So shnayim means 2. This is in construct form with esronim. So isaron is 1/10. Esronim is 2/10. Right? So shnei esronim. I'm kind of surprised that it's not using what's called I think it's called the double. So in Hebrew there is so for example, if you say chodesh, it means month. Chodashim means month. Chodshayim means 2 months. So there's a particular way of pluralizing a noun so that it's for 2. Here it's not using that. It's actually just it's using 2 and the plural. If it had said esronaim, it would mean the same thing. Which, I mean, belula, again, mixed, and this is written bemilui vav for some reason. Ba shemen, right, in the oil, shlishit hahin, 1/3 of a hin. Verse 7. And as a drink offering, you shall offer 1/3 of a hin of wine as a sweet aroma to the Lord. And 1/3 of a hin of wine as a drink offering, offer it as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. And 1/3 of a hin of wine for a libation, you shall offer up a pleasing fragrance to the Lord. Hebrew of yain lanesech shlishit hahin takriv reach nechoach lahavaya. Right. So, and wine, yain lanesech, like we said, is to spill or to pour out. Right. Shlishit hahin, 1/3 of a hin. Takriv, right? Again, this is the hefil of to bring close. Reach nichoach, like we said before, sweet aroma, lahavaya, to God. Pretty simple stuff. Verse 8. And when you prepare a young bull as a burnt offering or as a sacrifice to fulfill a vow or as a peace offering to the Lord. When you prepare a young bull as a burnt offering or sacrifice for a special vow or a fellowship offering to the Lord. If you prepare a young bull as a burnt offering or sacrifice by expressing a vow or for a peace offering for the Lord, V'chi ta'aseh ven bakar ola o zabach lefal'e neder o shlamim lahavaya. So v'chi, oftentimes we translate ki as because or for. It can be if or when. And yeah, here there Chabad is translating it as if. Understandable from the context. Ha'aseh, you shall make. right? It's in the second person masculine singular. So, yeah, it's kind of flipped a little bit. Instead of talking in the third person, now it's talking in the second person. Ben Bakar, literally a son of a bull, but right, a bull, right? And you'll notice Ben Bakar, right here, doesn't really mean like a calf. It's actually just telling you that it's like a bull, right? Something like a bull. Ola, right, which is the completely burnt offering. O zavach, or a sacrifice. Lefale, again using that extraordinary word. Neder or shlamim, right? We talked about neder. Shlamim is a peace offering. The root is shin lamed mem. You can call it a whole offering, right? So the root shin lamed mem can also mean wholeness. La Havaya, to the Lord. So that was verse 8. Verse 9. Then shall be offered with the young bull a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with half a hin of oil. Bring with the bull a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah, right? So that's 11 pounds, or about 5 kilograms of the finest flour mixed with half a hin, and so that makes 2 quarts, or about 1.9 liters of olive oil. Chabad. With the young bull he shall offer up a meal offering consisting of 3/10 fine flour mixed with half a hin of oil. Verse 9. Vehikriv al ben habakar mincha solet shlosha esronim balul bashemen hatzi hahin. So, shall bring close, right? Shall offer vehikriv al ben habakar, right? For the bull. Minha, grain offering. Solet, of fine flour. Shlosha, right? So shlosha is the number 3, right? Esronim, so again tenths, so 3/10, and ephah is implied there. Balul, mixed. Ba shemen, with the oil, right? It's ba shemen. The article is in the vocalization. Chatzi hahin, right? And chetzi means half, right? So chetzi hahin, half of a. Yep. Pretty simple stuff. Nothing complicated, kind of dry. And you shall bring as the drink offering half a hin of wine as an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord. And also bring half a hin of wine as a drink offering. This will be a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. And you shall offer half a hin of wine for a libation, a fire offering of pleasing fragrance to the Lord. Hebrew, V'yayin takriv la nesech, chatzi hahin ishe reach nehoach lahavaya. I am not sure where NIV gets that idea of a food offering. I really don't understand where they're getting that from. Yeah, and when you bring close, takriv, yahin as a libation, chatzi hahin, half of a hin, ishe, a fire. I guess they're calling that food, ishe. I mean, it comes from the word esh, which means fire. Reach nehoach lahavaya, sweet aroma, pleasing. Okay. Verse 11. Thus it shall be done for each young bull, for each ram, or for each lamb or young goat. 11. Each bull or ram, each lamb or young goat is to be prepared in this manner. Abad. So shall it be done for each ox or ram, or for a young sheep or young goat. And Hebrew, kacha ya'aseh lashor ha'echad, o la'ayel ha'echad, o la'seh ba'kevasim, o ba'izim. Okay? Kacha, this way, right? Kach, right? Means this, right? This way. So kacha, this way. Ye'aseh, so this is the nif'al imperfect. Shall be done. So nif'al is the passive tense. Lashor, for the young bull, right? For the shore. I don't know why they're saying young bull, shore. I guess a shore is young. Yeah, shore. Yeah, shore is young. Ha'echad, so for each, right? Las shor ha'echad. That's the way in Hebrew to say for each. O la'ayel ha'echad, or for a ram. O la'seh ba'kevasim, o ba'izim, or for a seh is a young, whether keves would be sheep and izim would be goats, right? So so they're translating Eseh is a young, either keves or ez, right? So sheep or a goat. Yep. Pretty simple stuff. Let's keep on going. Do stop me if you have questions. Verse 12. According to the number that you prepare, so you shall do with everyone according to their number. Do this for each one, for as many as you prepare. In accordance with the number you offer up, so shall you present for each one according to their numbers. Ka mispar asher ta'asu kacha ta'asu la'echad kemisparam. So the word mispar, the root is samech pe reish. So that's the same root as sefer, which means book, right? And lesaper, which means to tell like a story, or it can be to count actually. But a mispar is a number in Hebrew, and I guess it comes from an early tendency to write numbers down. Yeah, that's what the word implies to me. Mispar. Asher ta'asu, you shall do, right? Kacha ta'asu, so again, you shall do. La echad, for each. Ke misparam, like their numbers, right? So preposition chaf, and the suffix there is third person masculine plural, like their numbers. Yeah, not too exciting there. Verse 13. All who are native born shall do these things in this manner in presenting an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord. Okay? Everyone who is native born must do these things in this way when they present a food offering as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. 13. Every native born shall do it in this manner to offer up a fire offering of pleasing fragrance to the Lord. Kol ha'ezrach ya'aseh kacha et ele lahakriv ishe reach nechoach lahavaya. So zoreach means to greet. and Ezrach, native. Yeah. Used 17 times in the Bible. Yeah, so Zarach means to greet, to rise, to come forth. Mizrach is the east because that's where the sun comes up, right? Where the sun is Zoreach. And then Ezrach, I guess, is somebody who was there from the beginning. Yeah. Not exactly sure where the word Ezrach comes from. But it is often used as in opposition to ger, right? Which a ger is a convert or a sojourner. Oftentimes, it's translated as. Yaseh kacha, shall do this way, et ele, these things, lahakriv, to bring close, ishe reach nichoach lahavaya. Had these words. Verse 14. And if a stranger, as a resident alien, dwells with you, or whoever is among you throughout your generations, and would present an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord, just as you do, so shall he do. For the generations to come, whenever a foreigner or anyone else living among you presents a food offering as an aroma pleasing to the Lord, they must do exactly as you do. Chabad. If a proselyte resides with you, or those among you in future generations, and he offers up a fire offering of pleasing fragrance to the Lord, as you make it, so shall he make it. V'chi yagur itchem ger o asher betochechem ledorotechem v'asa ishe reach nichoach lahavaya ka'asher ta'asu ken ya'aseh. So, v'chi, and if, or when, yagur, right? So the root here is gimel vav resh, which means to live somewhere, but it is usually translated as a sojourn. Separately. O asher betochechem, or someone who is among you. Le dorotechem, and dorot is written bechisaron vav twice there, if you're paying attention. A dor is a generation, so your generations, for your generations. It's a strange way of putting it. Throughout your generations. Va'asa ishe reach nichoach lahavaya, and if he makes a fire offering as a sweet aroma to God, ka'asher ta'asu, right? Just as you shall do, ken yaseh, so shall he do. Yeah. I mean, not a lot there. Verse 15. So, one statute or ordinance shall be for you of the assembly and for the stranger who dwells with you. And, that's what I meant to point out. So, this itchem, be very careful. That's itchem is not a direct object marker. It is the preposition with. When it is in its simplest form, et, you can't actually tell the difference except by the context. But here it means with, right? Itchem. I forgot to mention that. Dwells with you, an ordinance forever throughout your generations, as you are, so The community is to have the same rules for you and for the foreigner residing among you. This is a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. You and the foreigner shall be the same before the Lord. And for the proselyte who resides with you, one rule applies throughout your generations, just as it is for you, so it is for the proselyte before the Lord. And I'm kind of kachem kager, what Rashi says here. Like you, like the proselyte, just as it is for you, so it is for the proselyte. This is the style of the Hebrew language, like the garden of the Lord. So he's giving other examples that it uses very similar language. Kamoni, kamocha, right. Okay. Haka'al chuka achat lachem ve'lager hagar chukat olam לדורותיכם, ככם כגר, יהיה לפני havaya. So, hakahal, kahal means to bring together, an assembly. There's a lot of synagogues named kahal, this and that. Chukah, so a chok is usually translated as statute. This is the feminine form of it. Achat, one. There shall be one statute, right? One chukah. Lachem, for all y'all. Ve'lager, and for the ger, proselyte, stranger, however you want to translate, sojourner, right? There is that article there in the vocalization. Hagar, who lives, right? So this, repetition is an emphasis in the Hebrew. Chukat olam, no thank you. So here, chukah is in a construct with olam, which literally means world, but here means eternal, right? So chukat olam is a construct of statute and everlasting. So an everlasting statute or ordinance. Led dorotechem, for all y'all's generations. Kachem, like all y'all. Kager, so with the stranger, right? And that's what Rashi was saying. That's how you say it in Hebrew. Yihye lifnei havaya. It shall be before God. Yeah. Pretty simple stuff. So that's the imperfect of the verb to be. Verse 16. One law and one custom shall be for you and for the stranger who dwells with you. The same laws and regulations will apply both to you and to the foreigner residing among you. Chabad, there shall be one law and one ordinance for you and the proselyte who resides with you. And the Hebrew, Torah achat umishpat achad yihyeh lachem velager hagar itchem. So this is actually a common way of phrasing things in the Hebrew, where two words that mean basically the same thing, one is masculine and one is feminine, will be repeated. And it's kind of funny, but something similar happens in the prophecy about the Messiah coming on a young foal or a young donkey. And in the Greek Bible, there's a misunderstanding. They don't understand that this is kind of a repetitive, normal way of putting things in the Hebrew. And so they have Jesus riding on the two of them at once. That's one of the things people like to point out as far as misunderstanding the Hebrew when translating into the Greek. But so Torah achat, right? So Torah is feminine, mishpat is masculine, right? Achat is the feminine of one, echad is the masculine of one, right? So it's using two words that essentially mean the same thing. Torah literally means to guide, and mishpat comes from the word to judge. Torah umishpat, echad. So one law and one law. There shall be for all y'all and for the sojourner who sojourns. Itchem, again, this is the preposition with, not the direct object marker. And that punctuation there, a pe, is a petucha. It's an open break, which means that you can see it in the margins. It's considered a bigger break. Oftentimes chapters break on a petucha, on an open break, as opposed to a setuma, which is a closed break. Okay. Verse 16. Did we just do that? Yeah, we did. Verse 17. Again, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, 17, the Lord said to Moses, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Vaydeber Havaya el Moshe le'emor, one of the most common sentences in the entire Bible. Verse 18, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land to which I bring you. So you'll notice in the English, this becomes repetitive and boring. In the Hebrew, this repetition is actually kind of makes it a chant and a song. So when you're listening it in the synagogue, it's actually not as boring as it sounds when you're translating it to the English. Because it's a song and it's alliterating and it sounds good. Okay, speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land to which I am taking you, speak to the children of Israel and you shall say to them, when you arrive in the land to which I am bringing you. So Rashi says the word bo'achem, this one, literally, when you come to this coming differs from all other comings in the Torah, for with the others, scripture says, when you come, ki tavo, לפיכך, כלומר, שבחולן נאמר ki tavo. But here it's be'voachem. לפיכך כולנו למידות זו מזו, וכיוון שפרט לך הכתוב באחת מהם שאינה אלא לאחר ירושה וישיבה, אף כולן כן, אבל זו נאמר בה בבואכן, משנכנסו בה ואכלו מלחמה, חייבו בחלה. Oh, so okay, this one is not ki tavo, it's be'voachem, right? All the other ones, it's ki tavo, and here it's a be'voachem, and that's why it's saying that this is actually when you already have gotten there. It's Rashi apparently from the Sifrei. Okay, well, let's look at the Hebrew. Daber el bnei Israel va'amarta alehem bevoachem, as opposed to ki tovo, right? Bevoachem el haaretz asher ani mevi etchem shama. So daber is the command form of to speak. El is preposition with the aleph. Bnei Israel va'amarta, so it's getting flipped. You shall say alehem, to them, preposition with the aleph. Be'voachem, in that you are coming. So the root is bet vav aleph, right, to come. But in when you come, right, as opposed to the other ki tavo. And I guess you wouldn't be able to translate that difference into the Hebrew, into the English very well. El haaretz, into the land, preposition to aleph. Asher ani mevi, which I bring. This is the hefil, it's the causative of to bring, and it is in the participle, it's in the present tense. Etchem, all y'all, shama, and the hey at the end is what's called the directional hey, to that direction there, right? Sham means there, shama means to there. Yeah. Verse 19. Then it will be when you eat of the bread of the land that you shall offer up a heave offering to the Lord. And you eat the food of the land, present a portion as an offering to the Lord God. And you eat from the bread of the land, you shall set aside a gift for the Lord. Verse 19, V'haya be'achalchem milechem haaretz tarimu teruma lahavaya. Now, V'haya shall be, right? Be'achalchem. So the root is aleph chaf lamed, which means to consume, to eat, right? In that when all you all eat, right? Be'achalchem mi lechem haaretz, from the bread of the land. It's in the construct form, right? And the article always goes on the last word in the construct chain. Tarimu teruma. Now, this is kind of interesting, and I was kind of trying to look this up before, because tarimu, the root, these sound like it's the same root being repeated. It's actually not, I don't think. Because this taf is part of the imperfect. Truma, the root is taf ram resh mem. Right? So tarimu means to raise up, to cause to come up. It's in the hefil, it's in the causative. Teruma, the root is taf resh mem, which means to donate, right? Litrom is a verb, just like larum is a verb. And these sound similar. They may in fact be related, but they are different verbs, right? And yeah, I just thought it was really interesting. And teruma is written b'milui vav. Didn't have to be, I guess. Lahavaya. So this is actually not a repetition, I would say. You shall bring up a teruma. Well, they're saying a teruma is a heave offering, and I guess you can say that in that in context, but the word teruma, right, litro, means to donate, and you can see that. I mean, so stones also has these as two different roots. You'll notice that the stone number is different. Okay, so verse 20. You shall offer up a cake of the first of your ground meal as a heave offering of the threshing floor, so shall you offer it up. Present a loaf from the first of your ground meal, and present it as an offering from the threshing floor. The first portion of your dough you shall separate a loaf for a gift, as in the case of the gift of the threshing floor, so shall you separate it. Hebrew, Reshit arisotechem chala tarimu teruma kitrumat goren ken tarimu ota. Okay, so now we're actually talking about this mitzvah, which we actually do even today. So the word chala, you may notice from chalot, right? When on Shabbat, we refer to the bread as challah, because we still actually perform this mitzvah and take a little bit of the dough and burn it up. So reshit arisotechem. So reshit is the construct form of the first, right? And we've talked about this at length about Genesis 1:1. right? But arisotechem, that's really, I don't think it's a Hebrew word. Perhaps coarse meal of uncertain derivation. In modern Hebrew, it means dough. In biblical Hebrew, it definitely means. Yeah. So they have it as dough as well. Possibly from Arur. I don't know about that. From Oref? I don't know. I mean, we use it as dough certainly in Mishnaic Hebrew. How many times does this show up? Only 4 times in the entire Bible. And one of those is in Nehemiah and one of those is in Ezekiel. Anyway, the beginning of your arisa, which I would probably say is dough. And yeah, I think it's all pretty much always spelled bechisaron. I don't remember seeing it bemilui. Although it is weirdly, yeah. I personally think it's probably a loan word because I don't know of a root eres. Yeah. Challah, right? So, they translate it as cake. I actually think the word challah comes from halal, which they agree with me, which means to profane something, right? And when you take a challah, when you take a little piece from the entirety of the dough, you are then making the rest of the dough something that can be eaten by everyone, as opposed to the challah itself is only supposed to be eaten by a kohen, and only a kohen who is in a state of purity. Some people will actually bake it and feed it to children that are kohanim, because they can eat it as children who while being in a state of impurity, whereas adults are not allowed to. Most people burn it, but some people do actually have little children eat it, and they have that tradition. Okay. Challah, right? However you want to translate that. I actually think it comes from the word profane, something that anybody can eat. Tarimu teruma, again, like we said before, to raise a donation. Ki trumat goren, right? Like the offering of a goren is a threshing floor. Yeah, so ligron, I think the root is to grar. It means to thresh from an unused word. Grar, well, they have gara. Okay, not going to get too much into these agricultural terms. But a goren is a threshing floor. It's written bechisaron there. Trumat, the tarimu trumat, kitrumat, those are written bemilui. If you're paying attention to that. Ken tarimu ota. That way you shall bring it up, right? You shall offer it up. Yeah. Not exactly sure if threshing floor in which no amount is specified. Oh, so the Mishnah in Challah 2:7 explains that, yeah, so you can take one piece of challah from as much dough as you want, and that's where they learn this law from. And you can look at the Mishnah there if you're interested in the details. Okay, verse 21. Of the first of your ground meal you shall give to the Lord a heave offering throughout your generations. throughout the generations to come, you are to give this offering to the Lord from the first of your ground meal. From the first portion of your dough, you shall give a gift to the Lord in all your generations. So, Mereshit arisotechem titnu lahavaya teruma ledorotechem. Very similar to the previous verses. Not sure if you're interested, but the chisronot, right? Ledorotechem. Very similar words. Titnu is to give or to set. And the punctuation there is a setuma. It's a closed break. Smaller break. Yeah, it's pretty much all the same words as we just had. Okay, verse 22. If you sin unintentionally and do not observe all these commandments which the Lord has spoken to Moses, now if you as a community unintentionally fail to keep any of these commandments the Lord gave Moses, and if you should err and not fulfill all these commandments which the Lord spoke to Moses, and there's a lot of Rashis there, I'm not going to do those. V'chi tishgu velo ta'asu et kol hamitzvot ha'ele asher diber Havaya el Moshe. So, and if it shall be tishgu, right? So the root is actually shin gimel gimel, shogeg, right? Which means unintentional mistake, right? As opposed to a zadon, zain dalad nun, which means a intentional. Just checking to make sure the stream is up. Okay. Velo ta'asu, and you do not do, et kol hamitzvot ha'ele, all of these commandments, asher diber Havaya el Moshe, which God spoke to Moses, preposition with the aleph. Pretty simple stuff. The only thing new here is tishgu, shogeg. All that the Lord has commanded you by the hand of Moses from the day the Lord gave commandment and onward throughout your generations. Any of the Lord's commandments to you through him from the day the Lord gave them and continuing through the generations to come. Chabad. All that the Lord commanded you through Moses from the day on which the Lord commanded and from then on for all generations. 23. Et kol asher tziva Havaya alechem beyad Moshe min hayom asher tziva Havaya v'hal'a le dorotechem. So, et is the direct object marker. Kol asher tziva, everything which God commanded. Tziva. Tziva actually literally means to connect. Alechem, preposition with the aleph, all y'all. Be yad Moshe, literally by the hands of Moses. Min hayom, from today, right? Yom means day. Hayom means this day, right? The day, but this day. Asher tziva Havaya, which God commanded, right? V'hal'a, and hala means further on. I'm not sure how many times this shows up in the Bible. It's a common thing to say in modern Hebrew. 16 times, right? Further on. Yeah. I'm not sure what the root is either. Let dorotechem, for all y'all's generations. Verse 24. Then it will be, if it is unintentionally committed, away from the eyes, literally, without the knowledge of the congregation, that the whole congregation shall offer one young bull as a burnt offering, as a sweet aroma to the Lord, with its grain offering and its drink offering, according to the ordinance, and one kid of the goat as a sin offering. 24. And if this is done unintentionally without the community being aware of it, then the whole community is to offer a young bull for a burnt offering as an aroma pleasing to the Lord, along with its prescribed grain offering and the drink offering, and a male goat for a sin offering or purification, also in verses 25 and 27. Let's see. If because the eyes of the congregation it was committed inadvertently, the entire congregation shall prepare a young bull as a burnt offering for a pleasing fragrance for the Lord, with its prescribed meal offering and libation, and one young he-goat for a sin offering. And Rashi's explaining that this is what we talk about Helem Davar, right? When in Horayot, this is when the leaders of the community make a mistake, then the community brings an offering, as opposed to each individual who the leaders mistakenly told to do the wrong thing. V'haya im me'enei ha'eda ne'esta lishkaga, v'asu kol ha'eda par ben bakar echad le'ola le'reach nichoach lahavaya, uminhato v'nisko kamishpat useir izim echad lachatat. Interesting, chatat there is not spelled with an aleph. Okay. V'haya im meine, and it shall be if from the eyes of the Eidah. So an Eidah congregation, usually we say it refers to 10 people or to a court, right? Or a minyan, and that is where we get the number of a minyan, and actually we get the number of a court from the minyan, right? Ne'esta, so this is the nifil of to do, right? Was done. It's in the passive. Lishkaga, right? So it is unintentional shogeg, right? Va'asu kol ha'eda. So the whole congregation, right, as the Beit Din, as the representatives of the community, shall do par ben bakar, right? So a bull which is a ben bakar. Yeah, I mean, not getting too much into it. A par, as opposed to a shore, is a young. Par is a little bit older, right? Agricultural terms, they're more specific about ages of animals than we are today. Echad la'olah, one as a completely burnt offering. L'reach nichoach lahavaya, as a sweet aroma to God. Uminhato, and its mincha, so it's grain offering. Venisko, and it's libation, right? It's a wine offering. Ka mishpat, according to the law, right? Mishpar. Useir izim, so a young goat, right? A kid of a goat. Echad lachatat, and the word chatat, usually referring to as a sin offering, has an aleph there, but this one does not. I wonder if Rashi says anything about chatat. Is missing an aleph because this sin offering is different from all other sin offerings. In this case, of all the other sin offerings mentioned in the Torah, which are brought together with a burnt offering, the sin offering precedes the burnt offering. As it is said, he shall make the second one a burnt offering. But this one, the burnt offering, precedes the sin offering. And so the Talmud in Horayot learns from that missing aleph there that here it is inverted. And it's kind of funny, but a lot of this stuff seems very dry to us, but there actually are a lot of drashot that after you get into all the rules, homiletically, the rabbis do actually get into explaining, right? Okay, verse 25. So the priest shall make atonement for the whole congregation of the children of Israel, and it shall be forgiven them, for it was unintentional. They shall bring their offering, an offering made by fire, to the Lord, and their sin offering before the Lord for their unintended sin. And generally, what we say is that korbanot, that sacrifices are only for unintentional sins. Intentional sins cannot be forgiven through, cannot be atoned for through with a sacrifice. So the priest is to make an atonement for the whole Israelite community, and they will be forgiven, for it was not intentional, and they have presented to the Lord for their wrong a food offering and a sin offering. And I will note again that in Judaism we say that the sacrifice is actually the culmination, not the beginning of atonement. First you atone, you are forgiven, and then you bring the sacrifice as a final step, not as the beginning. So the Kohen shall atone on behalf of the entire congregation of the children of Israel, and it shall be forgiven them, for it was an error, and they have brought their offering as a fire offering to the Lord, and their sin offering before the Lord because of their error. Right. V'chiper hakohen al kol adat bnei Israel v'nislah lahem ki shkaga hi v'hem heviu et korbanam ishe lahavaya v'chatat lifnei havaya al shgagatam. So, the root here is atone, right? So Yom Kippurim, right, is the Day of Atonement. The root here is Chaf Pei Resh, which can also mean to cover, right? So exactly what Chiper, right? It's in the PL, it's in the intensive, as opposed to the Kol. HaKohen, the priest, Al here with the ayin, Kol Adat Bnei Israel, all the congregation, right? This is the same word as Edah. It's in the construct form with Bnei Israel, right? The sons of Israel. Venislach, so this is the nifal. It's the passive form of, the root is samech lamed het, which means to forgive, right? Soleach, venislach, lahem, to them, ki shkagahi, because it was unintentional. Right? Vehem heviu, and they brought et korbanam. They brought their offering. Ishe lahavaya, right? A fire thing offering to God. Vechatatam, and their sin, right? Lifnei havaya al shkagatam. Actually, here, vechatatam is actually saying that they will be purified. And their sin offering. See, so there's mechatat, right, which is the waters of sin, literally, but it is also the waters of purification. So I think that is kind of implied here, like mechatat. Mechatat is... Bakar Chatat. A fountain for Mikor Chatat. Yeah. I would take a look at, personally, I mean, obviously chet is a thing to study, and this is definitely a word to look up in your concordance, chet and chatat. The word chatat shows up 294 times. So Lifnei havaya al shagakatam, to their unintended sin. Yeah. Okay, verse 26. It shall be forgiven the whole congregation of the children of Israel and the stranger who dwells among them, because all the people did it unintentionally. 26. The whole Israelite community and the foreigners residing among them will be forgiven, because all the people were involved in the unintentional wrong. Okay. The entire congregation of the children of Israel and the proselyte who resides with them shall be forgiven, for all the people were in error. V'nislach lechol adat bnei Israel v'lagar hagar betocham ki lechol ha'am bishgaga. And this verse actually gets used, or a version of it gets used in the Yom Kippur services. Right, and it shall be forgiven to the whole people, because all the people were sinned unintentionally. L'chol ha'am bishgaga. Right, I remember that from the liturgy. Yeah, nothing really too strange, right? Again, forgiven is in the nifal, is in the passive. L'chol adat b'nei Israel, to all of the congregation of the b'nei Israel, and hager betocham, and the ger, right? However you want to translate, sojourner, right? Betocham, among them, with a vav, if you're paying attention to that. Ki l'chol ha'am bishgaga, because, well, literally means to all of the people. It is unintentional. It is kind of a strange way of putting it, but that is, I mean, the common saying. I just remember it from the liturgy. And the punctuation here is a setuma. It's a closed break, which is a smaller break than the large break. Okay, verse 27. And if a person sins unintentionally, then he shall bring a female goat in its first year as a sin offering. But if just one person sins unintentionally, that person must bring a year-old female goat for a sin offering. But if an individual sins inadvertently, he shall offer up a she-goat in its first year as a sin offering. Ve'im nefesh achat techta, bishgaga, vehikriva ez bat shnata lechatat. Now that's really interesting. You'll notice that it says nefesh achat, right? So nefesh, the word soul, is in the feminine, right? And it stays in the feminine in the whole verse, right? So while you're reading it in English, it doesn't really make sense why it's saying to bring a female goat, but it's funny. It's referring to a nefesh, so this is actually in the feminine the whole time. Yeah. I mean, everything else is pretty simple. Bishgaga ve'gura ez bat shnata, a goat that is the daughter of one of its years, so a young goat. Yeah, I guess that's a very somewhat strange way of putting shanata, right? Shnata, in her first year, lechatat, as a sin offering, as a chatat. Okay, 28. So the priest shall make atonement for the person who sins unintentionally, when he sins unintentionally before the Lord, to make atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him. The priest is to make atonement before the Lord for the one who erred by sinning unintentionally, and when atonement has been made, the person shall be forgiven. Okay? Chabad. And the Kohen shall atone for the erring soul which sinned inadvertently before the Lord, so as to atone on its behalf, and it shall be forgiven him. Okay? V'chiper haKohen al hanefesh hashogeget bechet'ah bishkaga lifnei havaya lechaper alav v'nislach lo. So it starts in the feminine. Well, Kohen is masculine, and chiper is in the intensive, right? To make atonement, it's in the masculine. Al is the preposition with the ayin. And then it talks about the nefesh, right? So it talks about the soul, and it's in the feminine, ha-shogeget, right? Which made, this is the participle of shogeg, and it's the feminine, right? Becheta, in her sin, right? Bishkaga, so made an unintentional sin in her sin as a unintentionally, right? It's repeating as an emphasis. Lifnei havaya, before God, lechaper alav, to make an atonement, and this is a preposition with the ayin, but now it switches to the masculine. V'nislach lo, and it shall be forgiven, right? It's in the nifal, it's in the passive, shall be forgiven to him. So it switches genders there. Okay. Verse 29, you shall have one law for him who sins unintentionally, for him who is native born among the children of Israel, and for the stranger who dwells among them. So again, it's saying it's one law. One and the same law applies to everyone who sins unintentionally, whether a native born Israelite or a foreigner residing among you. Chabad. One law shall apply to anyone who sins inadvertently from the native born of the children of Israel and the proselyte who resides among them. In the Hebrew, Ha'ezrach b'bnei Israel ve'lager hagar betocham Torah achat yihyeh lachem la'oseh bishkaga. So again, very similar to what we had before. Ezrach is native born, b'bnei Israel, among the children of Israel. V'lager hagar betocham, and to the sojourner who sojourns among them. Tocham is b'miloivav, which, okay. Torah achat, one law, right? Yihyeh lachem, shall be for all y'all, la'oseh, to those who sin, right? And here it's using the participle as the person who, right? Bishkaga, unintentionally. Okay. Verse 30. But the person who does anything presumptuously, whether he is native born or a stranger, that one brings reproach to the Lord, and he shall be cut off from among his people. Lots of notes here. Defiantly or with a high hand. That one blasphemes. Okay, we'll see what the Hebrew is there. He shall be cut off, put to death. No, being cut off is not being put to death from among his people. Let's see what NIV. But anyone who sins defiantly, whether native born or foreigner, blasphemes the Lord and must be cut off from the people of Israel. But if a person should act high-handedly, whether he is a native born or a proselyte, he is blaspheming the Lord, and that soul shall be cut off from among his people. Okay. Oh, beyad Rama. I see. Okay. V'hanefesh asher ta'aseh beyad Rama min ha'ezrach umin hager et havaya hu megadef v'nichreta hanefesh hahu mikerev amah. Interesting. Okay. So, nefesh, so again, we're talking about a soul. It's in the feminine, right? Asher ta'aseh, which does, right? And it is in the feminine. Beyad Rama, with an upstretched arm. So this means defiantly, obviously. And actually, I mean, in other places, it says that the Lord's hand is outstretched, right? It's something that it's visible, that it's something, yeah, that's done in public, right? Biyad rama, with an outstretched arm, literally. Larum means to raise, right? Rama means upraised, right? Min ha'ezrach umin hager, whether it's from the native born or it's from a ger, it's from a sojourner. Et havaya hu megadef. This person is megadef, and the root here, gimel daled pei, is usually translated as blaspheming or gadaf, to revile, blaspheme. Primitive root. Shows up 7 times in the Bible, and you can use your concordance for that. But yeah, I would translate it as blasphemes. Venichreta hanefesh hahi, and this soul shall be karet, literally means to cut. But this is cut off, right? But shall be cut, this soul, hahi, mikerev ama, from the, so kerev literally like korban, right, means from among, from between, right, the closeness of her people, literally, because we're talking about soul, which is in the feminine. Yeah, means people. Okay, verse 31. Because he has despised the word of the Lord and has broken his commandment, that person shall be completely cut off. His guilt shall be upon him. Iniquity. Okay. Because they have despised the Lord's word and broken his commands, they must surely be cut off. Their guilt remains on them. Okay. But if did we read that? For he has scorned the word of the Lord and violated his commandment, that soul shall be utterly cut off, for its iniquity is upon it. Okay. Ki diber davar havaya baza ve'et mitzvato hefar tikaret hanefesh hahi avona ba. Okay. Because davar havaya, right? The word of God, davar havaya, baza. So the root is bet zain hey. This is the simplest form of it, and that means to scorn, right? This is the same verb that was used when it's the same verb that was used when Esav scorns his bechora, his inheritance. Ve'et mitzvato, and his commandments, right? His however you want to translate commandments. Hefar. So hefar. I mean, it's hefil of farar, to break or frustrate. Yeah, it shows up quite a bit, I think, in the Bible. Yeah, 50 times to annul. Yeah, you can use your concordance there, but hafarat habrit, yeah. In Psalm 119 famously. Well, 50 occurrences. But I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Psalm 119, 126. That's one of the, it's a very famous verse. Okay. Hikaret tikaret hanefesh, right? So this is the nifal in the absolute, and being Surely shall be surely. That's how it's usually translated, this repetition here. Tikaret hanefesh hahi, this soul, again, we're in the feminine, avona ba. And so avon is one way of referring to sin, right? Her sin shall be upon her. Ba. And there's a petucha, there's an open break there. I'm kind of surprised that this verse has so many petuchas, I mean, this chapter, and it's so long, but it's not broken up more. Okay. Next verse. 32. Now, while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day, and those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation. They put him under guard because it had not been explained what should be done to him. Then the Lord said to Moses, "The man must surely be put to death." Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading all of it and I'm not doing verse by verse, partially because I was just discussing this verse yesterday with somebody, because you know, the new atheists have this thing where they think, where they say, if you really believe the Bible, you would be murdering your neighbor for breaking the Sabbath every day. And the fact is that no, that's not how it works. There was a process, as we see here, and actually, so the Talmud explains that this person is actually Tzlovchad, whose daughters later ask for an inheritance from Moses, and you can look that stuff up. But yeah, let's do verse by verse. While the Israelites were in the wilderness, a man was found gathering wood on the Sabbath day. Okay. When the children of Israel were in the desert, they found a man gathering wood on the Sabbath day. Hebrew. Ve'yehyu b'nei Israel ba'midbar ve'yimtza'u ish mikoshesh etzim beyom hashabbat. So, ve'yehyu, right, and were b'nei Israel, the sons of Israel, ba'midbar, in the wilderness. Midbar is either desert or wilderness. Ve'yimtza'u, right? So was matzah means to find, right? Limtso. And was found. Right. Ish means a man. Mikoshesh, right? And so koshesh, I believe, means to bind. To gather stubble. Well, kash means stubble or chaff. So they're saying, yeah, so it comes from that smaller root, mikosheshet. It's actually used more times than I thought. It's used 8 times in the Bible. So yeah, mikoshesh, so he was gathering, he was binding together, I would say. This is the participle of the intensive form. It's the present tense. Etzim. So sticks. Etz means wood, right? Can be tree. Etzim. Beyom hashabbat, on the day of the Sabbath, right? Which obviously is not allowed. And those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses and Aaron to all the congregation. 33. Those who found him gathering wood brought him to Moses and Aaron and the whole assembly. And those who found him gathering wood presented him before Moses and Aaron and before the entire congregation. Veyakrivu oto hamotzim oto mekoshesh etzim el Moshe ve'el Aharon ve'el kol ha'edah. Right? And so we learned that there's due process in the Bible. You don't just go around murdering people. Anyway, veyakrivu, so this is, and they brought close, right? And you can see that it's it sounds very much like the sacrifices we were just talking to, oto, him, right? So oto is when it's the direct object marker, ito is with him when it's the preposition. Hamotzim, those who found him, right? It's using the present tense as the noun of the people who do, right? Oto, him. Mekoshesh, etzim, right? Gathering, it's in the present tense. Etzim, sticks. El, preposition with aleph. Moshe, Moses. Be'el Aharon, and to Aaron. Be'el kol ha'edah, and the whole congregation. And this is part of the reason where we learn that a court that has capital cases must be at least 23. Actually, it was the 71, which ultimately. Okay. They put him under guard because it had not been explained what should be done to him. And they kept him in custody because it was not clear what should be done to him. They put him under guard since it was not specified what was to be done to him. Veyanichu oto ba mishpar ki mishmar, sorry, ki lo porash ma yaseh lo. So vayanichu is it's the hefil, it's the causative of to rest, to cause to rest, right? Vayanichu. Yeah. Oto, him. Ba mishpar, mishmar. Sorry, I keep on saying mishpar. I don't know why. So under guard, mishmar. Like I said before, you can turn a verb into a noun. So shofet means to judge. Mishpat means law. Zavach means to sacrifice. Mizbeach is an altar. Shomer means to guard. Mishmar is guard. Yeah, like watching, watchfulness. Yeah. Ba mishpar. And there's an article there in the vocalization. Ki lo porash, and here it's in the pual, right? Parash means to separate, but to explain also. And pual, so is the pual is the my brain will start working. It's the passive of the hefil. Am I doing that right? Stem pual. Of the PL, of the intensive, right? Yeah. Hufal is the Hufal is the is the passive of the causative. This is the passive of passive of the intensive, right? Nifal is the passive of the call of the simple or regular active. Okay. Lo forash, ma ya'aseh lo. What should be done to him, right? It's in the nifal, to him, and there's a setuma there. Yeah, I mean, slightly weird tensing, but pretty simple what it says, what it means. Okay, verse 35. Then the Lord said to Moses, the man must surely be put to death. All of the congregation shall stone him with stones outside the camp. And this is where we learn that the people who sentence someone to death are the people who have to carry it out. Then the Lord said to Moses, the man must die. The whole assembly must stone him outside the camp. Then the Lord said to Moses, the man shall be put to death. The entire congregation shall pelt him with stones outside the camp. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe mot yumat ha'ish ragom oto ba'avanim kol ha'eda michutz lamachaneh. So, and God said to Moses, preposition of Aleph, mot yumat. So, he shall surely die. This is the exact same, surely die that we have in Genesis 3, I believe it is, with Adam and Eve making the sin. Ha'ish, this man, right? The man, ha'ish. Ragom oto, and this verb, I think, just means to throw stones at, ragam. To stone, kill by stoning. And it shows up 16 times in the Bible. And yeah, they're saying it's similar to these other verbs, but yeah. Ragom, and it is written b'milui, oto, him, ba'avanim, so with stones, with the stones, there's an article there. Even means stone, and the word ben, boneh, as in build, is in there, right? Ba'avanim. Kol ha'eda, all of the congregation, michutz lamachaneh. So literally from outside of the mahaneh. So they take him outside of the camp. 36. So as the Lord commanded Moses, all the congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died. So the assembly took him outside the camp and stoned him to death as the Lord commanded Moses. So the entire congregation took him outside the camp, and they pelted him to death with stones as the Lord had commanded Moses. Okay. Veyotzi'u oto kol ha'eda el mehutz lamahane veyirgamu oto ba'avanim veyamot ka'asher tziva havaya et Moshe. So they took him out, v'yotzi'u, it's the hefil, it's the causative of letzet, to bring out, right? Oto, him, right? Kol ha'eda, all of the congregation, el mechutz lamachane, to the outside, from the outside of the camp, right? V'yirgamu, so they stoned him, oto, ba'avanim, with the stones. And there is an article there. Vayamot, and he died, right? It's getting flipped by the Vav. Ha'asher, like Tziva, commanded Havaya, the Tetragrammaton, et Moshe, Moses, right? To Moses. And there's a Petucha, there's an open break there. And here we are getting into the reason we actually are reading this chapter. Again, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, the Lord said to Moses, Chabad, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Vayomer Havaya el Moshe le'amor, one of the most common verses in the entire Bible. Speak to the children of Israel, tell them to make tassels on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a blue thread in the tassels of the corners. 38. Speak to the Israelites and say to them, throughout the generations to come, you are to make tassels on the corners of your garments with a blue cord on each tassel. Speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them that they shall make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and they shall affix a thread of sky blue wool on the fringe of each corner. Okay. The bear, so that's in the command form, right? El Bnei Israel, and that's preposition with the aleph. Bnei Israel, the sons of Israel, Va'amarta, and you shall tell them, it's getting flipped, Alehem, to them, Ve'asu, and they shall make, right? It's getting flipped again. Lahem, for themselves, right? It's in the plural. Tsitsit, and we discussed that word, Tsitsit, right? What it is. Al kanfei bigdehem, on the corners of their garments. So kanaf literally means wings, and this is actually why. If you ever take a look at a tzitzit garment, there's all kinds of rules, and we learn all kinds of rules out of exactly these words, but we're very, very careful about exactly how it's made. Bigdehem, so beged is a garment, bigdehem is their garments. Le dorotam, for all of their generations. And again, bechisaron vav, has happened all this chapter. Vednatnu, and they shall put or set al hatzitzit, to the tassels, or however you want to translate tzitzit, hakanaf, of the corners, petil, petil is a thread, right? Thread, cord. Used 11 times in the Bible. From patal, to twist. Okay. Techelet. Now, what is techelet? Good question. This is actually, okay, I'll tell you a funny story. So people constantly ask, what is the blue, what is the exact color blue of the flag of Israel? And unfortunately, the state of Israel has a very, very hard time giving an exact blue for their flag, because since it was made from a talit, right? It's supposed to be techelet, it's supposed to be blue. It's quite controversial to actually say what that actual blue is. So many years ago, one of these flag websites was having trouble, like, why can't I just get somebody to tell me what color blue it is? And I had to explain it to him, and it actually, that website, I think it's been down for many years, but like 20 years ago, he had put my answer on there of why nobody would tell him what color blue the flag of Israel is. So yeah. Okay. 39. And you shall have the tassel, that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them, and that you may not follow the harlotry to which your own eye and your own eyes are inclined. Your own heart, and your own eyes are inclined. You will have the tassels to look at, and so you will remember all the commands of the Lord, that you may obey them and not prostitute yourself by chasing after the lusts of your own hearts and eyes. Kind of funny, but like explaining this verse to little children gets complicated in the very religious places, because they don't want to talk about what the word zonim means. Yeah. This shall be fringes for you, and when you see it, you will remember all the commands of the Lord to perform them. And Rashi explains the gematria there, which you can look at. And you shall not wander after your hearts and after your eyes, after which you are going astray. Let's look at the actual Hebrew there. And so while we say this verse, most people will actually take the Tsitsit and touch them to their eyes and then kiss them. V'haya lachem letzitzit, and they shall be for you as tzitzit, right? And I think this is here, I actually would probably not translate it as tassel, but as shining things, things you would see. Uritem oto, and you shall see them, right? The vav is flipping it, right? Uzchartem, and you shall remember, zecher, right? Is to remember. Et kol mitzvot havaya, all the commandments of God. Va'asitem otam, and you shall do them, right? Again, it's getting flipped. Velo taturu, and you shall not turn, right? Tatur. Tur means to seek out, spy out, or explore. Latour. Shows up 23 times. To search out. To meander. Acharei levavchem, after your heart. And like I said before, when we talk about Hebrew, we usually... is there a difference between a command and an ordinance? I'm sorry, I didn't see that earlier. Mitzvah and chukah. Yes, mitzvah is generally considered when we divide the commandments into three, while a mitzvah can be referred to all three of them. Generally, we say that when it just says mitzvah, it's not talking about a mishpat or a chok, it's talking about an ot or an ed. And so the division between the three is a chok is something you don't understand, and a mitzvah or an ot or an edut or a witness is or a sign is something that we as Jews do to show that we belong to God. So, for example, Mila, the Sabbath, and specifically the Sabbath, and Tefillin are three examples of mitzvot or edot, right? Which the reason for them is to show that we belong to God. And then a mishpat is, as a judgment, is something that anybody should understand, makes sense, and is something you should do. You can understand it out of your, just pure reasoning. And so, like, not stealing. So we would say that mishpatim are things that generally Gentiles should do as well. Whereas generally we would say the actual otot, right? The things which are signs between Israel and God, actually Gentiles are forbidden to do generally. There are details to that, but yeah. Sorry, I missed when you asked that. Acharei levavchem, after your heart, and like I've said, explained before, levav, right? So lev, heart can be written with one bet or two bets. One bet means we generally say is with a pure heart or a heart that's unified. generally for good, whereas lavav is a divided heart, which includes both your good inclination and evil inclination. And one of the drashot given here is that you have to serve God even with your evil inclination, right? And after all y'all's eyes, right? And this is where you touch your eyes and kiss the tzitzit. Asher atem, which you, zonim. So zonah literally means to provide for, right? So lazun means zin, zain, vav, nun means to feed. So a zonah can be like Rahav, right? Rahab can be a innkeeper, but women who were innkeepers were often providing other services, and so the word also refers to prostitution. And zonim acharehem, which you prostitute yourselves after, right? Which you turn astray for yourself. Okay, verse 40. And that you may remember and do all my commandments and be holy for your God. Then you will remember to obey all my commandments and will be consecrated to your God. So that you shall remember and perform all my commandments, and you shall be holy to your God. Lema'an tizkaru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kadoshim le'elokechem. That is a holy use of the word Elohim. Yeah, and if I'm slipping into liturgical Hebrew, it's because I have said this verse so many times liturgically that's why. Okay, lema'an, so that tizkeru, you will remember, va'asitem, and do et kol mitzvotai, all of my commandments, vihitem, and you shall be kedoshim, holy, literally to be set apart, kedoshim, le'elokechem, to your God, all y'all's God. Okay, last verse, and yeah, this is an interesting verse. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. And at the end of this sentence, we always add emet, meaning this is true. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. And there's a huge Rashi here, which you can look up for yourself. Ani Havaya Elohechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihyot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Havaya Elohechem emet. And there's a petucha at the end of this. So, I am the Lord, all y'all's God. Asher hotzeti, which caused to come out, right? It's the hefil, it's the causative of letzet, to go out. Etchem, all y'all. Me'eretz Mitzrayim, from the land of Egypt. Lihyot, to be, right? And this is the infinitive of the verb to be. It doesn't show up so much. Lachem, to all y'all. Le'elokim, as a God. Ani Havaya Elokechem, I am the Lord your God, all y'all's God. And there is a petucha. Okay. So actually, we went through that pretty quickly. if anybody has any questions, either about this or anything else, please feel free to ask. I am... Oh, a couple of people did show up. Interesting. On Twitch. So glad to see people showing up on Twitch and looking. If anybody has questions about the Hebrew, either of this or anything else, please do let me know. Otherwise, I am going to go ahead and end, as I usually do, with Sephania 3:9. Ki az epoch el amim, safa berra likro chulam beshem havaya laovdo shchem echad. So then I will restore to the people a winnowed language, a pure language, so that they may all call in the name of God to worship him together. I am going to actually hang around for a bit longer, especially because I want to try looking at what's going on Twitch. I will also be available on the Discord server in case anybody is interested. Or if anybody has questions. Oh, there we go. What is the word you usually use for the name? You mean Havaya? I usually say Havaya because that means to be. Partially because I don't like this tendency that a lot of people have recently taken up of pretending that the Tetragrammaton is like a personal name. It is obviously a reference to the verb to be in the Hebrew. And I think the proof of that is when Moses says, when Moses first speaks to God, he says, Ehyeh asher ehyeh, I am becoming that which I am becoming, right? And so it is even conjugating, it's even conjugating that word. Actually, I wrote something to somebody who asked something similar just yesterday. So I think the key thing to remember is that Hebrew is an abjad, not just written, but in how you speak, right? So an abjad is a language like Hebrew where only the consonants are written and the vowels are inferred, right? So if I am saying and Benjamin, right, then Binyamin switches to Uvinyamin, right? So Ben-Yamin. So if somebody's name is Ben-Yamin, and I want to say and Benjamin, I say Uvinyamin, right? So that really changes the name quite a bit, right? The bet turns into a vet, and the segol, or I think it's a segol, not a sere underneath the bet, turns into a chirik, right? So the name is changing quite a bit, but it's still the same name. And but in Hebrew, they're exactly the same. I think that is the reason why that the theophoric names have different pronunciations, like Eliyahu and Shemaryahu, right? So those are two biblical names we have, which are theophoric. They have the name of God in them, right? And so with Eliyahu, it sounds different, and Shemaryahu, it sounds different from Yehonatan and Yehoshaphat, right? God gave and God judged, which are both biblical names, but it's the same name, right? So the name of God is in Hebrew, it's a form of the verb to be, right? What exactly the form is, how exactly it should be said, I think was always fluid, and I think people have difficulty understanding that, and that's why we have all the things about how should the name of God actually be said, right? So some people will say that actually Yahoo is the name of God, which causes all kinds of problems with the search engine, and if your email is on Yahoo. But the honestly, I think it's wrong to suppose that the Tetragrammaton is God's proper name. I think it is itself also a sort of title, right? And frankly, if I were making a translation from the Hebrew to the English, I would instead of translating as Lord, I would probably translate it as being. Of course, it would sound very different. It would be very if I were to actually make a translation into the English, which I would never do because I have no clue how that would actually end up. I definitely I think I would probably translate the Tetragrammaton as being with a capital B. So yeah. So that's why I use Havaya, which is modern Hebrew for being, right? I don't think it's used in the Bible itself. Yeah. Hope that answers your question. So actually, I've got one subscriber and 2 viewers on Twitch, which is way more than I ever thought. Unfortunately, my thing is unstable. I don't know if multi-streaming is gonna work. Hopefully it wasn't too bad for everyone. My pleasure. So, I am answering questions on YouTube in case the person or persons watching on Twitch is wondering what I'm answering to. Also, there is the Discord, which everyone is invited to. My pleasure. You are always way too kind. And my number one fan. Uh, okay.